Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Music Lab podcast. My name is Dogg, and I'm so excited to be back with all of you for another episode of the podcast. Today, we are featuring a band from Raleigh, North Carolina, Chatham County Line. Welcome, fellas. How we doing?
Good to be here.
Great to be here.
Dave and John. So everyone, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to our YouTube channel, our social media pages. That helps us. That helps the bands like these guys. And also check out our sponsor, RAR Outfitters. That's RAWR, outfitters.com. Don't just wear RAR. So guys, how we doing on this Monday morning?
Getting
Pretty
going. That's pretty good.
pretty good.
Did we have any shows this weekend or did we lay low this weekend?
Laid pretty low. I went and saw our drummer, Darren Jesse is a great songwriter and player, and Greg played pedal steel with him Saturday night. Went out and saw that. So had a big time in the big city. Now I'm ready for the week.
That's right.
So what's it like going to a show, being in a band for 25 years, going to a show like and being on the other side of it?
When you buy a ticket, you can write it off on your taxes.
That's one thing.
That is pretty much the win-win of being a musician. It's great. It's great. I love seeing live shows and seeing bands do their thing. I will say that being just older and wiser, that you want someone to get up there and give it everything. You want someone to get up there and put on a Jack White performance where it's just blood, sweat, and tears, because that's really what matters in this world is you got to get up there and give it.
I agree. And when you're in a town like ours, or at least the surrounding towns are close by with a lot of great music all around, you've got a lot to choose from, and you never know what you're going to stumble across, which is always a fun discovery, which we like to do. And then a lot of people around the Triangle area of Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, a lot of the musicians know each other pretty well too. So there's a kind of a community family effort, and everybody's kind of pulling for everyone. And so it's always good to support our friends and just go see new acts, because there's a lot of great music around.
Do you feel like the music venues kind of share that camaraderie amongst the bands?
I would think so.
Yeah,
We're kind of all friends here. When somebody's got a big show going on, the other venues might pivot to, something different or not along the same line. So there's not a lot of overlap. But we have a great music scene with really good quality venues. Frank, that runs the Cat's Cradle, has literally been the mastermind of the music scene in the Triangle for decades now.
yeah, Frank Heath. Yeah, man, he's special.
Best.
So has Live Nation tried to creep into then Raleigh or not really? Or what's that? How is that relationship between the local promoters and
Well,
the big
I
giant?
mean, they run the big Red Hat. They run the medium outdoor arena thing we have here, and they put all their acts in it. But you're not getting around that. That's just a fact of life right now. So, whoever's bringing bands and to town and paying them and making sure people can go see them, I get behind it. I don't really love $14 beer night, but I'm not sure what you're going to do about it.
Yeah, nobody likes $14 beer night.
Oh, I think we lost him.
There he
Dog.
is. We
There you
see
are.
him.
There. Now you're back.
So, when did we sign then to Yep Rock Records?
John.
Uh, so our first album with them came out in 2003. So I think we started talks with them, 2002 or late 2001, probably in that area. And our producer for that first album and subsequent, I think, two more albums he did with us. Chris Stamey had seen us perform opening for Tift Merritt. And at that time, that was out at Bynum General Store in North Carolina. And you still there? Okay, good. The Bynum General Store, and Dave and Greg were playing with Tift at that time too. They were in the band, so it just kind of worked out. We opened up, and Chris Stamey saw us, and right then and there was like, I would love to get y'all in the studio. And I think he was the first to kind of pitch the idea to Yep Rock and at least mention it, and that's where it all started. Thanks, Chris.
Go it all to Chris Stamey.
That's right. He's the man.
And is he still with Rep Rock now, or did he move on?
Well, he was just a freelance producer. He was in a band called the DBs for a long time. That they're actually back together. Him and Peter Holsapple still making great music. Stamey's made a lot of great records for Yep Rock and independently and under his own banner, and so he's around. But we are still with Yep Rock after all these years, which is pretty awesome. They're a great team.
Tried and true.
So, have you guys done a lot of vinyl with most of your releases then, or is it more digital, or how have you guys approached vinyl?
Well, I mean, as you can see from the records behind me, I'm a huge fan, and we really sequence our records and we approach the album as a vinyl album as far as length. And, for those of you that know vinyl, the last song on each side has to have certain qualities of not too much bass, not crazy drums, in order to take advantage of the inner groove, which can skip if you put too much information on it. And so that's something that has unconsciously happened in vinyl manufacture for as long as it's been around, and I think it impacts the record. And a lot of my favorite albums were vinyl first. So we try to approach making the record in the same way. It just gives you another guardrail to go by when you're creating a piece of art like a vinyl record. And so we've kind of done that from the beginning. And then when they started getting back into vinyl, we really dug into that. And they have reissued everything back to our third album, Speed of the Whippoorwill, on vinyl. And things have gone out of print. Four is out of print right now. Strange Fascination is almost out of print. We've got like 5 copies left. But I love being able to have that hard copy.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, is it for me, like, it's just the idea of having like this big picture on each fold, and like, the lyrics inside, like there's a whole process to it. It's almost like opening like a gift, every time you like put it on. Is that kind of how you guys feel?
Absolutely.
Yeah, giant tactile version of the record, which, as music fans love that kind of stuff. And so it is a perfect item for an album.
I attest to that too. I'm actually here at my brother's house, and he always said that's his favorite thing too. About he's a big music fan, and just the joy of going and getting the album, and then getting home, putting it, like the whole process of putting it on there, sitting down on the couch, looking through all the liner notes, and seeing the musicians that he recognized on another record. Like, oh man, I remember that was on that Steely Dan record, or that who sat in with who, and that it became this whole treasure trove that was exciting every time you opened it up to learn more about it. So I think that whole process really does add to the experience, as it should. And it's hard. That's why we keep trying to press to have vinyl too, or that I appreciate it as well, because you do lose that in the digital format unless you really want to seek out and find it, which a lot of people do too. But the vinyl is that physical, tactile thing, like Dave was saying. Very meaningful.
So how did you guys navigate the pandemic? Did you do live stream shows? Did you do like, people sit in your cars? Did you do outdoor?
Yeah.
What did we do to kind of?
And yeah, we did it all. We were
Every
lucky because we had some things like we were going to play the International Folk Fest in Greensboro, and they pivoted to online. So we just did an online taping. We
Mhm.
had just little things that gave us horizons as the days went on, that kept us in the game, kept us playing music. That's right when we made the transition where Chandler retired, and we decided to add drums instead of just going down the same road we'd been down before and getting another banjo player. And so we use it as a period of growth and discovery. We had this great buddy, Dan Hall, come in and play drums with us, and we would go and sequester ourselves away in a place up in the Virginia mountains, that a friend owns, and spend 4 days just jamming and just figuring out what we were going to do. And it was a long process. You know, Greg, our bass player, is a great pedal steel player. So there was some technical stuff that we had to figure out. Like I had to figure out how to cover the bass parts while he played pedal steel. And then we really converted things to electricity, the ways to amplify John's two acoustic instruments of mandolin and fiddle, and what devices we would use. So there was a lot to do there. And being a small business, we did get small business grants from the government, which were really rewarding and just kept us, able to do little projects like that, which was life saving. And so we
Yeah,
got through it and got on the other side, and it's all cylinders firing right now.
yeah, man.
So did the record label kind of have any pushback when you approached them after Chandler retired?
No, I mean, I don't not no, they were that's one of the best part about being with Yap Rock is they were always very musician friendly and wanted to promote and facilitate a band when they shift and do new things. They just like the journey of the because I mean we have been with them from the beginning, and even in the early days, I mean we were more traditional bluegrass without a doubt, but there were still elements that we weren't pigeonholed in this corner of strictly traditional. It was we were still doing, but we were playing Dave's songs because the songs were so great, but in this traditional format.
Right.
But they still didn't quite fit into other bluegrass norms and all those things. So Yep Rock was always on board to be, our champions to help that whole process go along, which has been great. So that's one of their hallmarks of that company is they're very artist friendly, in that aspect.
It also doesn't suck. I think if we had done it and it sucked, they might have been
Yeah.
changed their minds a little bit.
Yeah, they've been like, well, boys, let's sit down and have a discussion.
So did you go to Virginia to record because it's for lovers?
That's one reason. Uh,
Probably.
we worked at this guy Bruce's place it's in Conorock, Virginia. It's an old general store attached to a house that he actually grew up in and inherited. And great friend. We recorded albums with Jonas Fjeld there. Recorded an album with my band Stillhouse there. It's just, it's like a retreat where you live there, you make meals, you play music, you stay up till 3 in the morning. It's the way musicians operate at their best, I've found.
So,
It's a slight to heaven up there.
when you were in Stillhouse, that was 97, 98?
Yeah, that was the late 90s, and concurrent with Chatham County Line, I just found going through stuff, I just found a poster of Chatham County Line opening for Stillhouse at the local 506. And I wish I knew the year though. That had to be 99 or 2000 or something.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so there were concurrent, and then Stillhouse still kind of existed. And I'll say with this transition to electric Chatham County Line, it's more absorbed completely the vibe and my reason for having to tickle the electric bone with Stillhouse. So we're just moving on all together.
So what is the meaning behind Chatham County Line? What obviously it's a location. What was the reason for the
John,
band name?
So yeah, we were actually heading to our first practice, Chatham County encompasses. Well, it's like right on the border with Orange County, where Chapel Hill is, and we were going. We live in Raleigh, and we were driving to Chapel Hill to go to Chandler's house for our first practice. He lived on a farm. Right near the Chatham County line. So he was giving us directions, and he said, "All right, you're going to go up this road past the red mailbox, and if you go past the Chatham County line, you've gone too far." So of course we got lost. We went past the Chatham County line, and we never looked back. I think it was right around that time that Dave and I looked at each other and was like, "Chatham County line. What about that?" And it just something about that stuck right then, and we'd tell everybody, once we crossed the line, we never looked back. So it all happened right there.
Mhm.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So well done, boys. Well done.
Thanks, man.
So let's talk about the difference between singing around a single microphone versus this iteration that we have now, and maybe some pros and maybe some cons of both.
I mean, the years of singing around a single microphone and presenting our show, which we did for at least 15 years, it got us super tight. It taught us how to not play over each other. It really teaches you how to sing, even though John and I have really sung well together forever. It really just gets you to a tightness that you don't even understand almost. That's the benefit of it, and it can be a beautiful show in the right surroundings. We've had epic shows in theaters where you could hear a pin drop, but counterpoint, we've had miserable shows where the sound man didn't know what to do with just one microphone. The audience was chatty or screaming at each other to talk. I mean, if the audience is not on board and they're not playing along with a single mic, it doesn't really work. So we've had some nightmare shows. Um, but then, we added a couple satellite microphones just to try to get a little more volume, or like where John and Chandler could go to the side and play while I was, hogging the vocal mic in the middle. And we love that. We love the single mic. We toured with Jonas Fjeld with that and a couple auxiliary mics for 6 months out of a couple years, and so it's something we love. But when you add drums, you really just have to start plugging things in order to get the fidelity correct. And luckily for us, technology has come along that makes an acoustic guitar really sound like an acoustic guitar. Mandolin plugged in really closer to a microphone sound. And those technological advances happened right when we were changing over, right around 2019, 2020, and allowed us to retain the fidelity and tone. Because one of the reasons we did the single mic is a plugged in guitar sounds terrible. And so we were always chasing the tone of really good sounding albums, which are mainly done with microphones.
Acoustic guitar, right?
Yeah, acoustic
Yeah.
guitar. And it just any acoustic instrument plugged in
Right.
directly is terrible. But now they make these devices like LR Baggs has the voice print, and there's something called the Tone Dexter, which uses fancy computer programming basically to compare it to a microphone sound and make them more similar
Yeah.
uh, with EQ and stuff like that. And it's super cool stuff, and it allows me to plug in my acoustic guitar and not cringe. And
Yeah.
so we're lucky that exists in this day and age, so that we can present a show with a bunch of stuff plugged in that still sounds really beautiful.
Yeah, I even say too that I love singing with Dave, and part of the great harmony work we all did together was around that one microphone, and learning how to mix and balance yourself, kind of, especially early days without any monitors. We would just work on that, the direction, even listening back to just recordings as we practice of how far we should be from the microphone. I have a very loud voice, so I had to step far away, and it would still blend and work. So there was an element of that I felt it was hard to part with because I loved singing like that tight harmony. But nowadays too, there's elements of the show where I'll walk over and sing on a like a chorus or something with Dave, on one mic with him, just for like a chorus, and it works really well, and it's fun to do that from time to time too, to kind of revisit that,
Yeah, I completely understand what you're talking about. So what the when you started with or when you recorded at Echo Mountain, you kind of had an idea going in, like what you were gonna put together for this collection of songs, or how many songs did you kind of have like in the bag when you started in the studio?
You talking about Hio for Hio?
Yeah.
We had it all. I had it all planned out basically. There were certain sonic elements we didn't know. We had never played with Jamie Dick before, the percussionist. We'd never met him. We'd never met John Maylander that came in and played some amazing acoustic instruments and electronic goodies. So those were the unknowns for us. Song selection, all that. We had gone to Rock and recorded it once, twice. We had recorded it, and Jim Thorpe, the guys up at the Mock Chunk Opera House, let us rent the room for a night on a day off, and we went in there and recorded some songs. And so we had these versions, and then we don't have the budget to do what a band like U2 does in the studio, where they go in and work on one song for a week, and then they try it in all these different ways and different sonics and keys and feels. So what I did in the weeks before we went in is I went in my basement with a drum machine, because I also wanted to create versions of these songs that didn't have drums technically, but just had a beat for Jamie to vibe on. I did that kind of by myself. I tried different keys, different instruments, different approaches, different tempos, all this stuff to try to whittle down to what was the best approach for a song. Because I think a song's lyrics and feel all have to come together to this magic thing, and that's what great songs are and great versions of songs. I mean, Ode to Billy Joe has this crazy feel and sound that works with the story, and that's what you want in a song. And I really feel like we reached it, with these lineup of songs. I mean, we definitely recorded a couple more that didn't make the record, and we worked on a few that we didn't think were going to make the record, but ended up on there. I mean, the cover we did was not supposed to be on there. It just kind of sat better in the lineup than one of the songs that we left off.
Well, and the fact that we did some songs that we recorded one way and had this kind of mindset that that's what it would be when we went in there. But working with Rachel was so great and refreshing because we'd never done that. And there were a lot of tunes, that, like Lone Ranger or Summerline, or just some vibes and some approaches that she helped nudge and suggest that really changed it up too. So that was also, I think, a cool thing of Dave working with all those elements and different approaches, but then also having a new, fresh idea with Rachel and the musicians that came on board. So it was really all in the moment, in a way too. That was great.
Mhm. So let's talk about how we met Rachel. Obviously, on the George and Tammy Showtime, Max, or whatever
Yes.
it's called now.
Paramount or
How
whatever.
the
Yeah.
hell did that happen?
It's friend of a friend. Our buddy Zeke is a manager that lives down in the North Carolina area, and He is friends with T-Bone's TV guy, and when T-Bone's involved, because he was involved at the beginning with George and Tammy before Rachel took over. Um, he wants real musicians to play musicians on screen. He did it with Nat when he ran Nashville for 3 years, the TV show. Um, and so the call went out to all musicians in the area, and strangely enough, John and I could pass for two members of the A team. Our drummer Dan really passed for the drummer for the A team. For a while, we thought Greg was going to be able to be Pete Drake, but they brought in Russ Paul and Dennis Crouch to be the pedal steel and bass players in the A team, just because they were doing a live version of a song with Michael Shannon. It's really one thing leads to another, and all of a sudden you're sitting in a recreated Quonset hut in a airplane hangar in Wilmington watching Michael Shannon and Jessica Chastain chew up the scenery over and over and over. It was really a cool lesson in studio work, professionalism, approaching a project with an open mind and digging down. Like they would just dig down to the emotional core of whatever scene they're doing and really deliver it. And that's something that impacted us when we were making Hi-O. That's what we were doing. We're like, okay, well, I'm delivering this song in that way. I'm approaching it. I came from my trailer and I smoked
Yeah.
a cigarette outside of it, and I went in and I'm just giving this song everything. It was such a valuable lesson. But at the same time, we saw this young girl scooting around and making sure microphones were in the right place and doing really the technical stuff because they were singing live in the takes. They would sing live, and so they were recording that. They had an engineer there and a whole team. And John will tell you that that was Rachel, and she
Yeah.
owned it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And she, like Dave was saying, it was just so cool and amazing to have a front row seat to these, uh, star actors at the top of their game, really just delivering it. It was so inspirational for us too. But when we saw Rachel moving around and got to know her as the week went along, where we would start discussing things with her and found out her great taste in music and what she does on the side and how she works with a lot of people in Nashville. She's basically T-Bone Burnett's right hand woman, and he always speaks so highly of her, and it's like his protege that he champions a lot. And so we got to know her a little bit, and I remember talking with Dave, like, because we were wanting to do this new record, but we hadn't come up with a producer yet. There were a lot of names and things coming around that we were looking at, but then this kind of just fell in our lap, and Dave and I talked to each other like, well, what about Rachel? Maybe this is who we need to work with, and how great to have a female as like one of the things that really resonated with me too is that speaking of vinyl, when you open it and look at all the producers and everything, I don't know many women or female producers when I open an album. It's just the facts that I know they're out there, but generally it's male dominated in that category. And so we saw her working and what she brought to the table and how hard she worked and what she knew, her knowledge. I was like, she is just as good as anybody else to do this job. And I think we should work with her. I think it'd be great. And it was, everything really worked. I'm so glad that we were able to do that. And she said yes automatically. She loved what we were doing. And even meeting her on the set of George and Tammy, she told us she had discovered us through a playlist right here in the Sharon Van Etten tune that we did. And then so we were on her radar a little bit, just briefly, because she had heard us randomly on a playlist. So it all worked out. Yeah.
So you got that lasted about a week then, that whole process?
It was 2 weeks, I think, right? Yeah.
10. Yeah, we were on set 10 days.
10 days. Yeah.
How was the food?
It was top. Everything was top shelf. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, man.
they spared no expense. It was crazy.
That was a cool experience, man. Once in a lifetime.
Wow. Yeah, that is really cool. So let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to like the beginning kind of. And so when you first started writing songs, were you guys mostly music first and then lyrics, or lyric first and then music, or did it really kind of just depend on the song?
Yeah, that's really an unanswerable question. I don't understand the process, even though I do it. It's just something that occurs. Really, this day and age, as always, is you're just trying to find a new path for a song to swim through sonically and melodically and musically. It just needs to be fresh and new and not some kind of strange retread of the past. At least that's the thing that's driven me all these years, is to just create a new sonic thing. As it gets harder and harder as the days go by, because there's a lot of people out there making music. Um, but yeah, sometimes lyrics, sometimes music, sometimes all at once. Chip of a Star was one that was just kind of bleh and came out all pretty much fully formed in 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, Chris Stamey takes a shine to it on a demo tape, and we put it on the fourth album. And we find that us being ourselves, instead of us kind of trying to recreate a bluegrass sound, is what the crowd responded to, is us being able to be ourselves. And that's why we love the band right now more than anything, is we're making music that we would get in the van and listen to. We would listen to bluegrass on the road, but we would also listen to a lot of other way more sonically interesting music.
John, you would feel the same way?
Oh yeah, I think it's just Dave's the chief songwriter for the band. I work a lot with different melodies and arrangements and those kind of things for crafting the song. But for lyrics and the composition, the structure, Dave comes in with the blueprint in a way. And but there's also a lot of great stories that surround the songs of how they came into being too. There's a lot of those things that add to it that I always appreciate a lot with Dave's songwriting. And even like one of the things that resonates with me with his songwriting, a great example is Queen Anne's Gold, which is on the Strange Fascination album. To me, that's such a cinematic tune, and we're big movie buffs as well. But when I sit down to listen to that song, the story it tells, I'm there, seeing the shipwreck, and I'm seeing the wind and the waves crashing. It just there's something about his approach to songwriting that puts me in a cinematic landscape. And I feel like even making Hio, there was that element of the way the album looks, the front cover, everything has this kind of harkens back to golden days of filming and those westerns that we all love, So a lot of that goes into it, which I appreciate very much.
Yeah, I agree. It's well said. So let's kind of fast forward to kind of why I got involved with you guys or started listening to you guys, the Bourbon Beyond Festival. This was the first time that we've played it.
Yeah.
Yeah. First time. Yeah.
So what was it like having, obviously you didn't have 210,000 people in front of you, but having a festival that had 210,000 people at it? Talk about the experience, talk about the show itself, talk about any bands that you got to see.
It was a nightmare. Logistically, no. I don't understand what they're doing there in a lot of ways. I mean, they get like a million bands to play for 30 minutes, but it is almost too much. We went there the night before and saw Beck and Sting, and just the scope of that festival is insanity. And the fact that they put that many people in there when Zach Bryan was playing, luckily we weren't there that day. That it's almost unfathomable. You could take that area and just do a Zach Bryan show and just have that many people and it'd be fine. But it's just, stages after stages. And the only festival we've really played like that is Merle Fest in North Carolina, which is very acoustic based. And it's, you go and sit in front of a small stage and watch the masters of acoustic music. But this is just rock band after rock band in these 30-minute sets. It was super fun. We saw some great music. They really do take care of the bands, and it's not a nightmare technically. It's just like to conceptualize of it or to run it. That's the nightmare part for me. I can't. I have enough trouble getting us to a gig and making sure we get sound check and dinner, and to imagine putting on was like 30 acts a day or something is overwhelming. It was it's a cool setup. I mean, really, you're getting the best of a band if they're playing for 30 minutes. And then you go
Yeah.
right to the next stage and somebody else is just hammering it out. Um, I guess I'm just feeling for the fans that might want a little, like if you're a big Black Pumas fan, you might want more than 30 minutes if that's their only gig in Louisville for 5 years or something like that. But you hope those people come back around. We saw some great music. I mean, the Tedeschi Trucks performance
Yeah.
really just, grown men out there crying. It was so good.
Yeah. We saw our buddies, His Golden Messenger. They played a great set. And the Black Pumas and John Maylander, who we had mentioned before, that played on our album. He was out there with Bruce Hornsby. So we got to see him. And Maylander's such a sweet soul and incredibly talented musician. So that was great to see cross paths with him out there, on the road. That's always great too, especially anybody we've played with or that was on the studio record that we can cross paths with is always fun. But I would say more akin this festival to the Stagecoach, which we played that years ago. That's on the same grounds as Coachella, and I felt it maybe was a little more like that, just with the madness of how many people were there, and there's all these stages and things going on all at once. It's a lot. It's an overload, of music and just sounds and sights and all that stuff. But yeah, it was great. It was really cool to see a lot of the acts we'd never get to see otherwise.
Yeah. And I think that you see that in the audience. They're just like mainlining band after band that they get to see because that festival's bringing them in a very, professional manner. We were glad we weren't on the single microphone. I will say that because
Yeah.
the grounds are big, but they're not so big that you can't hear a rock band on another stage while you're playing. And so we were pretty excited to get up there and just bang out 30 minutes. I mean, when the White Stripes played the Cat's Cradle, they played for 30 minutes. When the Beatles show was 30 minutes long. Even Shea Stadium is like 35 minutes or something like that. There's a long history of just getting up there and doing it. All those reviews at the Apollo, like all those shows back in the day were just you got up there and played like one or two songs. So it's really cool to approach something that way. I feel for the audience because that's a long day.
Right.
You got to stay hydrated for a day like that, and you got to have somebody else drive.
So, who played before you and who played after you on your stage?
I think it was Kaya Cater before us, a great acoustic musician, and then Trey Wellington, who we just saw in Raleigh last weekend, played after us, and they had put on real solid bluegrass shows because we were on the bluegrass stage, And we're not really telling anybody this, but we're not a bluegrass band, but we still get the love because we were in the community for so long,
Yeah.
uh, that people let us sneak in there and play some rock and roll for them.
So that's a good segue. Did you get a lot of, and maybe pushback is the wrong word, but did you get a lot of like from your OG fans, like when you kind of did this transition, did you get a little bit like of some head scratching or not really?
No,
No,
to be honest, people love it. I don't know how to describe it. People just love that we're putting just a little bit more sonic texture and volume behind not only the new songs, but some of the older stuff from the catalog. Um, what did Greg told me that we have some fans in Atlanta that came to a show out in California, and what did they say? They were like, I guess Chip of a Star is just a big rock pop song now. And he's like, yeah, I guess so. Yeah. And they're like, well, all right, cool. Because people do fall in love with recorded versions of stuff or stuff from their past, these touchstone moments. And so as long as you approach it with respect, I think that's fine. And that's what we're doing. We respect the tunes and we're not gonna butcher them or anything, make Neil Young versions out of them. We're just gonna put some drums there and some pedal steel if we can.
yeah.
So has that changed, like John, for you, has that kind of changed your approach on how you play with this new iteration or
Yeah, I mean, like Dave said, we just adding some new, I've got a pedal board and some things that help amplify the mandolin and the fiddle a little more in this context of this group. But there's the only, back in the day when we used the one mic, it was a dance on stage of when it was somebody's solo, they would move up to the mic and everybody else would move out of the way. So there was this whole kind of dance going on and mixing yourself, which was great to do for that. And this doesn't have that since we're all separated on our own microphone. But I don't do the songs have always had a unique design to them and an approach that we always embrace this kind of forward looking approach to these songs. So changing them in this format with drums and like Dave said, having just a little flavor sprinkled out throughout it. Even our fans, they end up, most of the people that we see just love this new approach that we're taking to these songs. They just say, I loved you guys in the past, but I love this band now. It's so energized, and so a lot of positive feedback on that. And we also embrace these changes as well, and I think that's what a lot of people admire too, when a band can take that step of, because a lot of times that doesn't really work as well when you're shift to a whole new thing, and a lot of people drop off, and I'm sure there's people out there that maybe prefer the old way and have a more bluegrass centric view on.
There's one
Yeah,
guy overseas that
yeah, that's right. There is that one guy.
really mad.
Yeah, he
really
was,
bad?
He's really
yeah, one guy's mad, but otherwise we're okay.
There is one band, and it just so happened they just released a new album on Friday that I feel like has gone in a different direction, and I can't do it anymore. Is
Yeah,
Coldplay.
yeah,
oh, Coldplay.
yeah.
They
I
went
hear.
in a new direction. What new direction?
It's
Yeah, I
like
don't know.
there is no guitars anymore. It's all
Oh,
blips and synths and
yeah,
just like sounds, like atmospheric sounds.
yeah.
I
Like
saw somebody saying it was like '90s Christian rock, which yeah, I could maybe see that. That's all on SNL, and I was a little bored.
But,
yeah, like
well,
Johnny
that's
Cash is
the
a
only place. That's the only place they had to go from where they started. They started as a rock band. It's like if you're gonna bubble up and try to make a stadiums dance, it's like you're gonna end up playing dance music. There's no other.
electric Billy Strings.
Yeah. Really,
Yeah,
really
he's crushing the bluegrass in the stadium. So
couple pedals and
love
some
that.
Doc Watson licks. He's killing.
Killing it.
Yeah, Billy Strings is definitely killing it, and it's awesome that he became a dad too. So congrats to
Yeah,
Yeah.
hell yeah.
yeah.
Love that for him.
The thing about bluegrass for me is, and I think it made me recognize how important for me as a listener drumming is,
Mhm.
because I can only listen to bluegrass for about 30 minutes and then I have to move on to something else. And I think it's because I'm not hearing drums. Like, is
Not
that
hearing
fair
it.
to say?
Well,
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Yeah. The one of the challenges, like John's answer for changing his style of play, is we all were the drummer, the banjo pluck, the mandolin is the snare
yeah,
head,
awesome.
Yeah.
and the acoustic guitar. Everything is played very hard, and it was these. There would be magic moments where we'd be playing hard as hell on a stage, and it would have a drum almost because everybody's being one piece of the drum set. And
Yeah,
having added drums now, it's really our job initially was to just stop playing, and because we would technically overplay for music if you had a drummer, because John's still playing the snare, but there's a guy playing snare now.
yeah,
So yeah, you just really have to be into the fact that it doesn't have drums,
Mm.
or you just listen to 30 minutes and move on.
yeah.
Yeah.
30 minutes is always good for anything. I think
Yeah,
you
yeah.
practice or whatever, it's always, that's kind of how I like to go about life is focus on something for 30 minutes and then go somewhere else and take a break from it, come back to it later. That also could be my ADD.
Yeah.
But
Unless you're Sting, because supposedly Sting does it for 6 hours at a time.
oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
another top of the hat to that guy.
Old Sting.
He still got it. He put on a killer show, man.
He
Oh my,
did. That three-piece was crushed.
three-piece from heaven.
Mm. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. So in this realm of, streaming and Spotify and Tidal and Apple Music and, you guys obviously are definite like vinyl, aficionados. Is it tough to like realize that like, you have to release singles now and like, like whole albums, there's this notion now that you should release like five singles instead of a 10-song album. Like, what's your guys' take on that?
I don't know. It's just the business. I did notice I was scrolling through Apple's country music and it was all EPs. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, five singles. It's just attention span. Um, Everything in this world is made for short attention spans, and you either play that game or you don't. And we'll choose to go down the road that the art leads us down.
Yeah,
Right now, that's whole albums, and it's a package that works together of 9 songs or whatever it ends up being. And if we get left behind, we get left behind. It's not what motivates us to do this.
yeah. I think the album approach and how we've always done it is how we've stuck with it, and kind of we would do that, continue to do that. There's no reason to change for the short attention span because the true fans out there and the people that want to uh, get into a band or they're going to listen to the whole album. I feel like even with these days of everything being so instant, and got to have little 30-second sound clips and then you're out. I don't know. I mean, there's something to be said for some of that to just get their attention. But for the most part, I want to hear an album. If I discover a band with a 30-second clip and I dig it, then I'm going to go, like in the old days, I would try to seek out and what have they done? Or let me check out this album they just put out and listen to the whole thing.
Mm.
And if I find it's just like a little 3-song EP, then it seems I'm a little cheated or something, that they're not, I like bands that are willing to commit to the process and the album. And like, this is our art. This is our novel. read it, with your ears.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. When people release a single from an upcoming album, I don't like listening to it. I like to listen to the whole album when it comes out if I can wait. It's just where my head's at, but I'm an old man, so
Yeah,
sorry.
I hope that bands are kind of have more of your take on that, and we see that. And I think also too, it really depends on the genre too. I think, Americana bands, roots rock bands, jam bands, I think they're always going to be concerned about the album style. And I don't think, it's your
Sure.
pop rock and your, one hit wonder
It was
kind of stuff.
it, it was a few years ago that I think I was reading about there was some Justin Timberlake album and all the songs were 6 and 7 minutes. It was like a wait, what's happening here? And so I think for a second they were trying to redirect people into longer, like a Marvin Gaye style thing where it's a long track that gets this groove going.
Yeah.
But who knows? I think
Which,
people
go
are
ahead.
trying people are trying everything. You're not going to
Yeah.
find one shoe that fits all.
Well, I was just going to give an example for Hayo is the opening track Right on Time. The album version opening track has a very long intro of us kind of warming up and jamming and almost kind of getting the groove going before the song starts.
Right.
And we do have an edited version of that that's shorter because if you put that on the radio, that intro is quite long, and if it's played a lot on the radio, that it takes a long time to get to the meat of the tune. So a lot, I understand why the radio edit's there, and it does make sense for the radio. But for somebody who's going to listen to the album, to sit down, open the cover, and look through it as you drop the needle, it gets you prepared for what's coming, and you're settling in. That was the whole vibe and approach to that anyway, that we wanted people to feel like, get comfortable, like hear us, we're kind of jamming before the album actually just goes off, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's elements of that. And then I also think that when you do hear these, when singles come out, sometimes there's an element of how movies have trailers and it gives you a little teaser of what's to come. So there can be an element of that that can be used wisely and effectively. But as long as you still have you're not compromised and you're able to do like we stuck with that as the album opener. If you get the album, that's what you're going to get. But you do have also a radio edit just for specifically radio.
Well, I want to talk about instrumentals, and I'm glad you said that. So the song "Under the Willow Tree" that you apparently wrote in Sleepy Hollow. Um, what what was the inspiration I want to hear the story behind that song and why an instrumental.
Well, first off, instrumentals I love on an album. I mean, you're getting me yelling at you for 9 tracks. You might want to break in the middle just to kind of recalibrate or breathe or do some yoga. I don't know where the song came from. As a guitar player for all these years, I'm hugely influenced by Leo Kottke and John Fahey and there's some modern young players that do long instrumental things, and being from the bluegrass world or having inhabited in that world for a long time, the instrumental is a thing in the bluegrass show.
Oh, yeah.
So and I also love the fact that it's not a bang, beat you over the head instrumental like a rawhide would be at a bluegrass show. Um, I don't know. It came from somewhere. I had started experimenting again with open tunings for this record, and it really pushed. It was the song "Chip of a Star" has this banjo figure on it, and your listeners might know banjo is tuned open G, open C. There's several different open tunings, and an open tuning is as if you played every string and without having your fingers on the neck, it would make a chord, and that's what an open tuning is. And so there's a lot of traditional instruments like the banjo that are tuned open where you can really like you just hit it and then it makes a sound. I'm a big fan of Indian music that where atonal things are kind of de rigueur. It's just that what you do. Um, and so I got a Stratocaster open G in order to do Chip of a Star. Um, and that led me down a path of, okay, if I'm going to play an electric guitar, I want it to be in an open tuning because that makes me play different. It makes it for this band, it appreciates the role that Chandler played all those years playing the banjo. It doesn't replace it, but it kind of pays tribute to a building block that people obviously loved in the band. Um, and then so I started to play the acoustic in open C, and that Under the Willow Trees in open C tuning, which is a really deep, um, brazy tuning where every string is one in the five of the chord, and only the high E is the third. Um, but that just led me down a path, and now at the shows I play all in open tunings for the most part, and it's just really adds a complexity and a non-complexity to the show that's almost indescribable, but people are responding to.
Yeah, and we have throughout the career of the band on throughout our album. That's the common thread. Majority of our records, we at least have one instrumental on.
Yeah.
I would be remiss, and I don't think either of you have mentioned this, that you have also, for your live shows now, you've kind of recreated a lot of your older songs, correct?
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. That was really the kind of rock period of the downturn where we were like, well, let's dig back through the catalog and goof around with these tunes and see if with the new palette we were pulling from, if we can make them even better than we thought they were to begin with. And so we've really brought a lot of tunes back, like Chip is one, and where they do you recognize it and you recognize the lyrics and the melody, but there's just a new sonic palette happening. John plays through a Mellotron pedal on some tunes, which gives him sustain that the mandolin doesn't really technically have. And so that really adds to the show.
Yeah, it's just a cool new filter to put these songs through. I think with the new band elements with drums and everything, it's been fun to visualize that, and then because there's some tunes that we wouldn't mess with either, but there's some that can lean in the direction where, yeah, I could see this. And even when we first recorded these songs years ago, there was always that kind of thought process of how cool it would sound with drums, or the way it would. Even some of the early records, we did have drums on songs that now that's always there since we have drums in the live show. In the past, it was just in the studio, and we couldn't do that live. So it's been fun to see that and get them out, and kind of gives it a bigger sound and a bigger audience too, I think.
Yeah.
For those songs that they might not know, that the new audience we're getting, that they become familiar with these older songs, but in this new filter and this new format, I think is a great way to reintroduce ourselves to older fans and newer fans too.
Yeah. Did you guys see a big bump like after you were on the Tammy and the George and Tammy show?
Lost you.
Oh, did you see a bump like from the Tammy and George show after? Nothing. Do, 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 do.
Oh, there you go.
There
Here.
Did you see a big bump in like listeners and like more at your shows after the George and Tammy show, or not really?
I mean, we're on that show for all of a total of 9 seconds. So,
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean,
we're just a face in the crowd.
Yeah. No, it's more of just a fun story and a fun experience. How we would have never met Rachel. This Hi-Yo wouldn't have happened the way it did if we didn't have that opportunity. So it goes back to our buddy Zeke Hutchins for pitching us as a band in North Carolina to play to T-Bone's TV guy. Like he's like, "Oh, I got just the guys for you." So it was, we owe a lot of thanks to him for all these moving parts to come together for that, and to meet the musicians we did on the set. Everything, if that hadn't happened. So I look at it just, sure, we're where we are now because of that. That was a great moment in time for us, for sure.
Yeah. So being in a band for this long, you've got to have some favorite venues that you've played, favorite cities that you've played. I want to hear. What do we got?
Mm.
One of my favorite venues and places we ever played, we've been to Norway quite a bit through the years. But back in 2019, we had the honor of playing with Miss Judy Collins, who we've had a nice kinship and recorded some stuff, some albums with her. And we were able to play the Oslo Opera House in Oslo, which is just this magnificent, gorgeous, incredible music venue in downtown Oslo, Norway, and did 2 nights there. And it was just, to me, that was how great it sounded in there, and just the look and the feel of that place was mind blowing.
Yeah. That was filmed on your local PBS channel if they've picked it up. Yeah. That was a few years ago. I mean, there are, like, Cat's Cradle really is one of the best venues in the country. I like an old theater. I like the Mock Chunk Opera House in Jim Thorpe. It's got a cool old vibe. I love churches. We just revisited the Southgate House revival and just outside Cincinnati and Newport. It's just a cool old space that's been converted basically into a double rock club. There's places all around that we really dig. The Charleston Poorhouse has this wild vibe down there, and Backstreet Pub in Beaufort, even though we haven't really played there in a long time. Yeah, I mean, there's so many good venues in this country. Mississippi Studios in Portland's a cool room.
Yeah.
The Tractor Tavern up in Seattle. I mean, that's the West Coast run. That's just so much fun. McCabe's down in Santa Monica. It's a cool little thing. It's just the history of who's walked across stages becomes
Red Rocks is cool.
We played Red Rocks was really what people don't tell you about Red Rocks is it's the band's experience because the way the seating is almost vertical, so you see every single row from the stomach up. You're seeing almost the whole person all the way up this hill, and so it puts the crowd in the band's lap. And so people go to Red Rocks because it's a beautiful place to see a show, but what I don't think they understand is the band also is losing their mind because it's such I mean, the audience is tacked for them. Yeah.
We got to go to Red Rocks. We didn't get to go there for a show, but we, walked around. I, stood on stage, looked up, you're absolutely right. It is one of the best venues in the world. Definitely.
So cool. Such a cool experience.
So let's talk about your time in Austin. Did you guys ever do South by Southwest in your career?
Oh yeah. Quite a few times. That's where we Yeah, and that's where we I remember specifically it was like our first time there. We met our boss Flesman over there, who's the Belmont bookings in Europe, and they're kind of right outside of Amsterdam. And they were there, and we met them, and they immediately wanted to book us for shows in Europe. So that's where we started traveling to Europe because of these guys that saw us at the Continental Club, I think,
Yeah.
Yeah, the Continental is again, talking about iconic music venues, that is definitely up there in Austin. So, yeah, I actually, the last time that we were in that I was in Raleigh. So this is my Raleigh story for you guys. So I was there about 6 years ago, and then for the when Pearl Jam was supposed to play in Raleigh, it was when the bathroom bill was going on in North
Oh, uh-huh.
Carolina.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. HB2.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think Bruce Springsteen had canceled his show. I think Paul McCartney might have canceled his show. And
Yeah.
so I am driving down to Raleigh for this Pearl Jam show. It was a 420 show, April 20th.
Yeah. Sure.
And so I got tickets, like, hanging out with my college buddy. And he texts me I'm in about 20 miles south of Richmond. And it was a Monday and the show was on a Wednesday. And he texts me that they canceled the show because of this bathroom bill. And I had no idea what this bathroom bill was. And so then he calls me and he's like, oh, it's this. I'm like, what? And so
Yeah.
they were playing in Hampton, Virginia that night. So I
Hmm.
told him, I'm like, hey, man, I'm going to do a detour instead of going to Raleigh. I'm just going to shoot to Hampton. And so it was only
Oh,
like
yeah.
2.5 hours from there. And
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
was seeing him at the Hampton Coliseum that night.
Well, that's a legendary place to see a show as well.
The spaceship, right? Isn't that what they call it?
Yeah. Definitely saw a good one or two Jerry band shows there back in the day. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's only like 10,000 seat. It's not that big.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so um,
Yeah.
let's talk about future shows. What do we have lined up from now until the end of the year?
Not much. We only have uh five, six official shows right now. Playing down in Alabama and two nights at Chicky Wawa in New Orleans. I'm a big New Orleans fan. If your listeners like streaming radio, WWOZ down there in New Orleans is a great vibe station with some really cool
Absolutely.
good listen. So we're gonna do two nights at Chicky Wawa, and then in December we're gonna play three shows as a holiday run of shows with our friend John Maylander, opening up and then sitting in during a portion of the show. So we're really looking forward to that. That'll be in Knoxville, hopefully Asheville, and Hall River, Saxapa Hall, North Carolina, and that's our year. And then next year we have some really cool stuff we can't talk about just yet, but it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, man.
That's great. That's great. So let's talk about New Orleans for a second, because we would all be remiss to not give this city some love. I've been there, I think, 4 times now. We were there this past April for Festival International, which is in Lafayette. You guys ever played in Lafayette?
Uh-uh.
That's a cool little town. That's a really
Oh
cool
yeah.
town. And that festival they do, it's something else. But anyway, I would always make a trip at least to New Orleans 1 or 2 nights while we're there, and we've done that the last 2 years. Um, it- what it about the city for me is there is just such a resiliency in those people, and like you can feel it when you go into that city just by talking to them, by interacting with them, looking at the city itself. Like the city itself is just a resilient city, like structurally and everything. And then, just from a music standpoint, I mean, you can go to 15 different places on a Monday at 3 o'clock and you can like watch live music. Like it's just incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the heartbeat of America. It really is the coolest town from a city perspective. I know places like Manhattan have a vibe, but New Orleans has a vibe and a musical backbone that's almost indescribable. On WWOZ, they do the live wire every day, and it is 30 different musical acts that you could see all across the city any night of the week. And so just to get the opportunity to go down there and play music in New Orleans and to see, hopefully go out and see some stuff on our night off, we're really excited. It is the coolest town in America at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about it, John?
Oh, I'm excited to get down there too because I love the vibe of anything New Orleans, and we've got some good friends that have moved to North Carolina from New Orleans too that we just love to learn about the culture and to get back there because we really haven't spent a ton of time in New Orleans, so this will be just or Louisiana in general. I think this
Our
gets
first shows in Louisiana.
yeah
Awesome. Yeah.
yeah
Good.
man
Good. Good. Um, well, that's awesome. So I appreciate you guys doing this. Much love and much hope and everything for greatness for the rest of the year and in the
much.
future. And
Need to put all that love and wishes and thoughts and everything to our brothers and sisters in Western North Carolina too, because they are struggling right now. So we're all trying to pull together and do what we can to help those people out too.
Rebuild. Yep.
Yep.
is there anyone, any of the venues in Raleigh that are doing anything that are has scheduled anything or that you guys know of or
They're
Well,
working. They're working on all sorts of stuff.
okay.
There are tiny shows and there's huge shows coming to be done as benefits. I know Sturgill,
Yeah.
his Asheville gig canceled, and he added another day in Cary, which is right outside Raleigh, and so he's going to do a benefit that day. And then I think Eric Church and some other huge country star are going to play the stadium in Charlotte, and so there's a lot of things happening. We're going to be involved in whatever we can be involved with here. And like I said, in December, we're playing Asheville if everything, happens, if they have water, etc., which I would think they'd have by that time. And so to set aside some money to put towards the effort. I really do think that humans have come together in an awesome way in response to this, as they normally do. And the response is almost overwhelming. Every city in North Carolina is collecting stuff to send up to the hills, and they're getting to everybody, which is really great. And I think the government's doing their best
yeah.
to get there and help people. And so, humans do have a way of coming together, no matter what's going on.
What I was going to add, one of the bright lights in all this too is that a lot of independent music venues across the state of North Carolina are donating every ticket sold. They're going to give a portion of that to the hurricane victims or the hurricane anybody impacted by the storm. So that's being set up. So that also gives a great motivation for people who do want to help and do things and be like, hey, I can go see a live show. And I know that part of my tickets or that I'm buying the ticket that's going to go towards helping some folks, which I think is great.
That's great.
Yeah, it's another reason too that we always take for granted music and what it means to us and like, especially the general public. So like any opportunity that gives the general public to think like, hey, music does mean a lot more than
Yeah,
put it in your car, and listen to it. So,
absolutely.
yeah. Well, good stuff. Guys, thank you again for doing this. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, our social media pages. That helps us. That helps the bands like Chatham County Line. Also, check out our sponsor, RAR Outfitters. That's RAWR, outfitters.com. Don't just wear, RAR. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I've been Dogg. You've been great. This is the Music Lab Podcast.